And now a word from our sponsor. Revolution Beauty is an affordable and accessible makeup for all. And since day one, Revolution has been challenging beauty norms and championing diversity. And all of the products are 100% cruelty-free, which is fantastic, and designed based on consumer feedback. So Revolution has something for every skin type and any occasion. Now, we are teaming up with Revolution Beauty to give you 20% off your next purchase. All you have to do is use the code PODGO20. So that's PODGO20 at revolutionbeauty.us. So check out the link in our show notes and join the revolution today. I am back at it with some money saving tips for you guys. Today I want to talk to you about Honey. Honey is an online extension to your browser that automatically finds the best deals and coupons on the internet. They have thousands of companies that they find coupons for. They scour the internet for you. So no more manually searching for coupons or the best deals. Honey will do it for you. And get this, Honey is a free extension that you add onto your browser. I will go ahead and add the link to the show notes. So go ahead and click on that link and you can upload Honey and start saving today. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Financially Free Journey podcast, and I'm your host, Courtney Dyer. And as you guys know, this podcast aims to dispel the seemingly complex topic of personal finances, money management, debt, savings, retirement, investing. The list goes on. And today is a guest episode, and I am so excited for this guest. Her name is Lindsey Lewis, and Lindsey helps modernize the financial services industry by attracting and retaining quality talent, and especially females with entrepreneurial mindsets. And as an advocate for empowering those interested in learning more about the financial industry, her goal is to really transform the status quo by being a catalyst for change. Now, one of the biggest compliments she has received is related to her fierce determination and her grit and her characteristics that really drive her to never give up. And you guys are going to get just a taste of that today with Lindsey. So Lindsey, welcome to the program. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you for letting me join your podcast.
I am so excited because such a large demographic of the listeners are female, and particularly working females that are, engulfed in a career and really trying to provide for themselves, their families, and be able to grow personally as well, which is a huge part of your expertise. And so, can you dive a little bit more into, what you do within the financial services industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a certified financial planner practitioner for the last 6 years, and I just pivoted, and now I work at a non-traditional college called the American College of Financial Services, and I work as the director for the Center of Women. And in our center, what we do is we advocate, promote, and advance women in financial services, and we do this through technology, applied knowledge, research, and education. So helping institutions review their business models so they're more conducive for women, helping advisors, agents, and practitioners with their business practices so that they can amplify their profession. And then eventually we're getting into the consumer space. So a educated consumer is the ideal client, and we want women to feel empowered about their finances, not scared. So I pivoted there so that I could really advocate for women in that space.
No, I love that. And why women? As a woman myself, of course, we have certain experiences where you're like, we want to help edify and lift up other women, but why women for you?
Absolutely. So women control 70% of the household finances. So they are really the decision makers in a lot of those monetary decisions that are happening, whether it's with budgets or with, purchases, et cetera. But it's in the single percentages of heterosexual couples that women own the investment management. And so really wanting to challenge that narrative and make that change, because at any given moment of your life, you could be single. whether it's your partner's choice, your choice, or God's choice. And so you definitely want to make sure that you're adequately prepared for all of the financial measures that happen. And so women are a $1 trillion market for advisors and for as consumers for companies. And so really focusing on having an educated consumer so that you can make better decisions when it comes to, your budget finances as well as your retirement finances.
That is such a gap between the percentage of women that really control the household finances versus the percentage of women that are, really making the decisions when it comes to the investment portfolio and retirement management. And to think that that's really what's prevalent is, the ability for women to say, you know what, I'm confident, I'm knowledgeable to make these decisions. I actually, I read this statistic, and it was a survey that was done, and it's around women's confidence when it comes to money. And they gave the same set of women 2 tests. In the first test, it was multiple choice, and it had 4 different answers. And when the women took that test, they got the majority. I think it was over like 85% of the answers correct, and it had to do with money management, investing, etc. They gave that same set of women a separate test, and one of the multiple choice answers was I don't know. When they took that test, it dropped down to like 35% of women, passed the test. And to say, confidence is not an issue, that would be a misconception. Confidence is absolutely an issue when it comes to women and investing, and I know that you've probably seen that as well, which is what drives a lot of your passion around your work.
Absolutely. So our research supports the same. It's interesting because men and women will take the same. We have a retirement income literacy survey, and men and women, they both fail the exam, but men will rank their confidence higher than women.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So they fail at similar percentages. The women fail a little bit more frequently, but men will say that they're more confident. And it's really interesting because women will abdicate responsibility to a partner. And if they're in a heterosexual couple, then you're giving your responsibility to a partner that's also failing, but is just slightly more confident. And so that's why I think it's so important for women to take ownership and even have some level of accountability and understanding, because you don't want to fail at retirement. That's the last thing you want to do. And having witnessed that in my different roles, so I used to educate for employer-sponsored plans, so for 401ks, et cetera. And I would be that person that would go out and educate them about their plan. And I remember sitting down with this cute woman in her 70s that didn't understand her plan very well. And I was the person that had to tell her that you will not be able to retire.
Oh, no.
And yeah, that was a tough day. We both cried, right? We're sitting there crying because her Social Security wouldn't even cover her rent, and she didn't have very much saved for investments. And so for her to have to work in perpetuity because she was in a divorce situation and she didn't negotiate that very well, really empowers me to help women to avoid those consequences and really want them to take hold of their finances and understanding. And a lot of times you'll get that belief system, like, I'm just not smart enough to do this. And I always joke, well, if you can follow a whole season of The Bachelor or whatever, you definitely have the aptitude, because it's all a relationship thing. It's like, how does this affect this? Investment management's the same thing. So if I add this to my portfolio, how does it affect this? And so taking the scariness and complexity out of it. And at any given moment, any financial advisor didn't know what a mutual fund was or an ETF was at some point of their life, right?
Right.
We all have to get educated. And so I feel like growing up in the community that I grew up in, where women definitely ran the household budgets, but really didn't know anything beyond that, really grinded my gears in a way that I'm like, no, because they get divorced or a spouse dies or someone gets disabled, and then they're left high and dry, and you see them just struggling. And there's just definitely things that you can do to mitigate that risk.
Well, and just by digging your head into the sand doesn't make the problem go away. And you had mentioned like being ill prepared for retirement. There is no do-over. That's not something that you want to mess up on and not do well at, because you only get one shot. And again, for listeners that are tuning in, you may be in a wonderful, healthy marriage, and your husband's doing fantastic. But again, deferring to your spouse, whether it's your husband, wife, whatever, your significant other, deferring to them also places a significant burden on their shoulders to be the sole person responsible to make sure that the two of you can live, and have the money that you need until you die. That's a huge responsibility and stressor to put on one person. So again, whether you're wanting to work in tandem with your partner, your significant other, or if maybe you're in a divorce situation or you're a widow, whatever the case may be, you absolutely have the aptitude to be able to learn the skills necessary to be successful, but you have to have the will alongside that. So, but I love your example. Like if you can follow The Bachelor and the complexities of that dynamic, you can understand this.
Absolutely. It's just all relationship based and understanding the consequences that happen from one thing or the other. And, whatever you're really good at, you've mastered because you spent time in it. And a lot of times people aren't very good at this just because they haven't spent time in it. And it's okay to say, hey, this is where I'm at, but I'm going to learn. And that's what's really important.
Why do you think it is? Like, why do you think there is this, it is factual. There's a lot of statistics built around it. It's not just our perception, but both you and I have worked in the finance industry for a long time as well. So we've also seen it in action. But why do you think this is, with women? Like, why is this an issue?
It stems from kind of the inception of income producing households, right? And so it wasn't until World War II where you saw more women starting to work outside the home, but they still haven't been addressed as a market by most financial institutions, right? And a lot of financial advisors, practitioners would address the husband over the wife. And also women are going to go to a Mary Kay party. They aren't necessarily going to investment clubs. And so I'd really love to push the mold there and create some sort of, women's investment club, Mary Kay type of party. So where you normalize talking about money and you normalize talking about retirement. I do it in pretty much every conversation with any of my girlfriends where they're like, oh, we're just not saving for retirement. I'm going to pause you there because
I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear you say that because you're my friend.
But you shouldn't be your kid's emergency fund and your kids shouldn't be your retirement plan.
Right. Oh, so, I love that. Let that sink in, guys. That's a really good, you hear a lot of people say that, well, I hope my kid does well so they can take care of me. I mean, oh, what a burden to place on your children. It's, you need to take control and you absolutely have the ability to do it and not place that burden on others. I was actually reading a statistic recently as well, and I'm sure that this will grind your gears as well. But during the pandemic, the majority of people that became displaced for work is women. And a lot of that statistically through surveys fell back on just the responsibility of the home fell more on women. So even if they were the higher income producer in the home, it seemed like they were displaced more, whether it was that they were laid off or they chose to stay home with the children because they couldn't go to school or daycare or whatever. And now, that sets women back statistically about 10 years to be able to make up for that gap in employment. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Why did that fall on women? And just your thoughts around that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely was women. And then the BIPOC women were even more affected, right? And so when you look at that, women carry more of the emotional weight or the mental load of relationships. There's a lot of statistics out there supporting that. And so when you go to quote unquote default mode, right, as a mother, as a nurturer, right, you want to make sure your kids are taken care of. And so sometimes taking that step back is what they think is the best case scenario for that short-term time horizon. But when you look at, the delay of retirement savings, the income producing that you're missing out on, opportunity cost, career advancement, if your coworker Todd stayed in and worked, then as they go to promote, right, and we're in a meritocracy type of society where, experience is maybe time or time and job, right? Those leaves of absence can reflect poorly on women. And then that affects their career projection. So it has so many consequences of that decision. And that's why I think it's so important to know your worth, especially if you had taken a step back or went to part-time work, because as you re-enter the workforce, there's oftentimes the belief system where women will say like, oh, that's just good enough. And I have a cousin that works, and her boss, in passing, right? It's definitely off the record.
Right.
He said, I love hiring women. And she's like, oh, why? And he's like, they never ask for raises.
Oh, but it's true. But the sad thing is that it's true.
Yeah. So women make great leaders. A lot of the leadership skills of empathy, sympathy, and those soft touch skills are what really helps companies grow. But you should also get paid for that, right? And you should know that that's your worth. And especially as you re-enter the workforce or as you're going through the workforce, a quote unquote small compensation difference of $5,000 or $10,000 over a working lifetime, over a retirement lifetime is huge, right?
Yeah.
So you might think, oh, that's just a couple $100 more per month, but that's a couple $100 more in company match. That's a couple $100 more in compound interest. And so it happens over time. And so I really want women to advocate for themselves, also find those advocates at work that are going to champion them through their career journeys and make sure that they know their own individual worth.
So, okay, you said know your worth. Dive into that a little bit more. What does that mean to know your worth? And how can the listeners really get to know their actual worth? Like, how can we make that tangible for them?
Absolutely. So what I do annually is I go through a review of my role and responsibilities, my background in education through benchmarking surveys. So you could use like a Glassdoor or a payscale.com. And essentially what you do is you put your skill sets, location, your title, et cetera, in there, and it will generate what the pay range is for that. And so what that does is it helps you see if you're on the high end or you're on the low end. And so I personally have done this throughout my career to just slowly make sure that I'm competitive, as well as making sure the firm I'm working at values me towards the market. And if they don't, then it's okay. Well, do they truly value me if they're going to underpay me by 20% to industry standard? And then that really helps you navigate if you need to take a next step, or if you need to, go back to your boss and say, hey, I really love working here. I love the culture, but we need to meet that mark.
Well, and that is so interesting because, again, number one, guys, what a great actionable step. Make sure that you earmark that for later to go, to a benchmark survey like Glassdoor. Make sure that what you're being paid is competitive within what others are being paid in your field and your geographical area. Because again, cost of living, you can see a big differential depending on where you live in the country. So make sure that you're making it specific to your area. But, it's so interesting to think that there is such a pay difference. And you had mentioned with your cousin, it's like, oh, women never ask for raises. There is always room to negotiate for more. And statistically speaking, women hardly ever negotiate offers versus men almost always negotiate their offers. And, just professionally, I have experienced that myself. Anytime I hired a man versus a woman, I always had men, which you expect, right? And I wish that everyone would do it. And that is is the way that corporate America works, is like you would hope that they would come in with their best offer, but they're trying to make a good deal for themselves too. So you have to know your worth and advocate for yourself. And so I didn't know if you had any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would also say sometimes you may not get a monetary bonus, right? If they're really strapped and they're at the top end, but you can negotiate other things, more PTO days, half day workday Fridays, half the time in the office. So you can be really creative in that way where perhaps it isn't a dollar amount at first, but you can, who doesn't want 10 more PTO days in the year?
Right. Well, and that has a monetary value, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just a base salary negotiation. You have to look at the benefits because you've seen this in the workspace that benefits have become more prevalent in negotiation tools with the incoming workforce of course, millennials and Gen Z. Benefits are more top of mind than just base salary because again, it comes to the comfortability of the job, and then the projection of the career growth is really important for the current workforce, right? That's like in the thick of it. And so that's such a good takeaway is, okay, if it's not base salary, maybe you're happy with that, definitely look at the other benefits available to you and be creative with what you negotiate for, because absolutely knowing your worth and not being afraid to have that conversation, which I think that's what it comes down to for a lot of people. It's like, I know my worth, but I just do not want to have an uncomfortable conversation. Okay, you guys, I'm all about giving you free resources to help you build your knowledge and confidence and ability to build your income and your wealth. So I want to talk to you guys today about a platform called Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where thousands of creators have created carefully curated courses and content to be able to help increase your knowledge and skills when it comes to making money. And I actually went in and I just typed in finance at the top of the website, and tons of classes on personal finance, money management, debt 101. The list goes on and on. So if you're wanting to increase your knowledge and have a new skill to be able to increase your income, Skillshare is the platform for you. So I have partnered with Skillshare, and I have a special link and offer for you guys. So click the link in the show notes and it will take you to a free trial. And after that, if you decide to stay on, you can have a discounted rate for your annual membership. So make sure that you click the link in the bio and tell me if you like Skillshare. I'm talking to all of my small business owners, or maybe you want to start a small business, but you're not really sure how to tackle it and get started. One of the first things you need to do is build a website, right? And that is a big hurdle to jump over. That's why I've partnered with Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is a leading expert in website design. They have award-winning designs and templates for your website. So you can go in, it's so easy to use. When you go on the website, you can click on their ready-made templates and you can plug and play exactly how you want your website to flow, how you want it to look and be laid out. I mean, it is phenomenal, such high quality. But what I love, guys, is how simple it is to use, because I'm not trying to learn how to be a coder or HTML, right? Like, I just want to run my business. And so they take all of that guesswork out of it for you, so you can just focus on your business. And because of this, you guys know I love to help you save money, right? You've figured that out by now. So I've partnered with Squarespace, where you can go and you can sign up for a free trial. And if you decide to stay with Squarespace after trying it out, then you can get 30% off your annual subscription fee, which is huge, right? That's such a great discount. So make sure you click the link in the show notes and you will get that 30% discount. So what are you waiting for? Go get a professional, high quality website that is super simple to use.
Yeah, but when you think about it, is that uncomfortable conversation worth compromising your retirement future? Right?
Yes.
That is the bigger question, because if, you fast forward to your future self, she's going to say, or he's going to say, you should have just had that conversation, because if you start your salary out at a higher range, then as you get promoted and as you go to different jobs, right, that's where your benchmark is. And so you want to keep elevating that benchmark more and more. And if you don't have those crucial and tough conversations, right, your future self is taking a hit.
Oh, I love that. Again, it's like know your worth, people. Create a benchmark for yourself because, yeah, if you're willing to settle for less, then you also have to take into account, annual increases. A lot of companies do that to try and keep up with inflation, right? So if you're getting 3% per year, for example, which is an average, well, you're getting less because your salary was less. You didn't take that time to negotiate, and just being able to quantify how that compounds over time, it's critical to just have the conversation. There was something that you and I had discussed previously that I wanted us to touch on for the listeners, and that is performance reviews. They're never fun, right? And I want to talk about how someone can create their own performance review and then be prepared when their boss pulls them in their office for that dreaded performance review conversation. So how can someone create their own performance review? Like, explain that concept to the listeners.
Yeah, I think this is a concept that really helps in that practice management part of your career. And so, what I have found really helpful is that I document all the goals that I set. So, typically, most institutions will make you put your goals into your payroll system or something like that. And so, I document all of those goals and I make them, reachable, but also aspirational, right? In that nice little sweet spot. And then every week, I review the previous week. So on Monday, I'll review the previous week and add to all of those goals anything I did in that previous week. And so I'm keeping this running list because usually what happens with performance reviews, whether they're semi-annually or annually, is that you can't remember, right?
Yes, it's like I don't even know what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone what I did to achieve these goals.
Correct. And so if you do that and you make a practice, I block off, 30 minutes on a Monday morning, you just type it up, right? And so I have 5 goals and I put them all in those different buckets and I just type them up. Really what happens when you do that is that you're setting your performance review up for your success. So you walk into your boss, hey, what have you accomplished over the last 12 months? Boom. I have a list of 20 projects. I have numbers, tangible percentages, et cetera, already pre-prepared so that when you go in there and let's say at that conversation, you're going to ask for a raise or a title change or something like that, you have the data already in existence rather than them pulling it out of you, right?
Oh,
You're
I
coming
love that.
super prepared.
Well, who knows more about what you've done day to day to be able to achieve those goals? Not your boss. You know. So doing the I love that. What a tangible, actionable piece of advice is weekly saying, okay, what did I do this last week? And it could be 15 minutes, right? I mean, just doing a touch base and saying, what did I do to make progress on these performance goals that have been set for me that will either equal a raise or a promotion or a higher compensation package. I mean, whatever the case may be for your career and you being prepared. So instead of it being a one-way conversation, you go in and your boss is telling you how you did. It's a two-way conversation with you also presenting to your manager, this is what I did. So I love that piece of advice.
And then the cherry on top is if you can tie it back to the institution itself. So if you can say, this is how I helped the company make money or save money based on this project, it's just like the ribbon on top.
Yes.
Showcasing, hi, I'm also strategic and
Yes.
also realize my value for this institution.
Oh, okay, guys, like you need to take note. If you're not already, like pull up the notes on your phone and take some notes because she's just dropping bombs on us right now, knowledge bombs. Okay. I have another question for you, Lindsey. So talk about what a reverse interview is and how can that help the listeners?
Yeah. So a reverse interview is, let's say you're going through the job interview process, and that is when you're prepared for the interview to interview the firms. Your job is where you're going to spend percentage wise a lot of your time, maybe majority of your time. So you really want to make sure it's a great fit for you and also for them. So typically what I advocate for is to study the organization in advance. If you have a firm that you're interested in and they may not have a job opening, try and reach someone to do an informational interview. And I listed a couple of my favorite questions to ask. And so I'll repeat them here real fast. So if you're doing an info interview, ask the people or the person that you want to have that job one day, why did you choose this career? What are the current projects you're working on? How has your past experience helped you? What is the greatest challenge your department faces? What is important in preparation for a role like yours? What's the biggest reward of your job? What would surprise people about your daily work? And if you could go back in time, what would you have done differently?
Ooh, those are good.
They're all really, engaging questions. And especially if you go with like the info interview approach, it's not as invasive, but also you could ask that to anybody in an HR interview as well. And I'm all about cultural feels because you want to make sure that you are valued, you fit in, and you can advocate for the mission of the institution you're going to be in. And so just if you're in an interview, you can ask a couple of these questions, like, how do you feel like I could be a cultural add to your firm? What is a key differentiator in your company's culture? Always ask, how are promotions at your firm within internal versus external hires?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yep. How are teams structured? How do you create a collaborative environment? What are new things that you're excited about? So really you come prepared with these questions because a reverse interview is, are you actually a place that I want to spend my time at? Right?
Yeah.
And are you a place that I really feel like I can advocate, promote, and advance? And so that's what's really important when you're thinking about those reverse interviews. And then I also always advocate to have 3 to 6 star stories. And what a star story is a 90-second story where you talk about a situation, a task, an action, and a result. So brevity in this is what's important, but also making sure that you get your point across. So for instance, in financial services, I would say on almost every interview process, they'll ask the question, tell me about a time that you had to deliver bad news to a client and how did you resolve it? So what I have prepared is, I had a client scenario where a systematic error caused a monetary damage in a client account. I quickly realized what had happened. I called the client and assured them that we would make them whole. The client thanked me for my transparency, and it actually increased our trust and rapport with that client. And this skill set of ownership and accountability would be paramount for my role at X company because it would help build meaningful rapport with clients in the future.
Oh, boom. Got the job.
Right. And so it's, if also how you answer the phone, right? When a recruiter calls you and you have a scheduled time and you're like, hello, who is this?
Right.
Like, hello, this is Lindsey. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with? Right? Like, that is your first face. Make sure that you are prepared, polished, look great, all of the above.
Oh, I love it. Again, what great examples, because having those star examples, because in almost every interview process, they are asking you open-ended story questions because they want to see how you work through problems, how you're able to articulate yourself and be able to define not just, quantitative results, but with qualitative activities that drove those results. So if you have those star examples ready and in your pocket, this is going to take out a lot of the anxiety of the interviewing process because half the battle is just not knowing what they're going to ask you, right? But you may not know how they're going to word the questions, but you've got these tools in your tool belt and you've got examples ready that can be plugged and played, depending on how they ask the question. And that can make you come across super confident in the interview.
Absolutely. And you are a great asset, right? If they're even interviewing you, they're interested in you. And so I think it is just articulating your worth to that audience, and absolutely having those stories just creates that level of confidence that you need.
Yes, you're elevated against the other people that you're going against for this job. I mean, and it'll come across absolutely. I have a follow-up question for you. We had also talked about limiting beliefs, right? We talked a lot about this at the beginning too, particularly with women. So how can listeners really demolish limiting beliefs and really stop apologizing, and why should they do that?
Yeah, it is so important that you become the narrator of your own thoughts. And, for me, I've struggled with, intrusive thoughts in the past. But what's important is, hey, would I tell my daughter these things that are going through my head? Would I tell my coworker if I replayed the tape? Right. And so really working on that on a daily basis, right? If you're sending an email, those, oh, should I word it this way? And just being confident. And I think also what happens in our society is that, sometimes our male counterparts, we love them, but for the same skill set, they get praise versus women are attacked, right? So women can get like patronized by womanhood, right? And so, people use the term, well, she's really bossy. Well, what if you rethought that? Oh, she's a natural leader. She's a visionary. She is assertive, right? Rewriting that narrative with different words. Women are more dramatic. How about they're more expressive? They're more passionate. And for me, I've rewritten that narrative around getting elevated in meetings, right? I used to say, I get so emotional in these meetings. No, I get elevated. Just rewording a couple of things really goes a long way, because you do have absolute worth and you can absolutely innovate and change this world, men or women, right? But you just need to make sure that you're writing that narrative in your head about great things that you're doing. And it's a daily practice. It doesn't come all at once, but you slowly make those changes and you can really elevate your opinion of yourself.
Well, our subconscious is extremely powerful, and I think we underestimate it sometimes. So what you feed your subconscious is what you will attract around you. And so understanding your worth is first and foremost so critical, and that will help propel you to be able to demolish those limiting beliefs that you have. But as you said, it's not, an overnight change. It's something that you consistently work towards and you are conscious of. So when a limiting belief or like an intrusive thought happens, you acknowledge it for what it is, right? You don't shame yourself, but you acknowledge it and then say, how can I reframe this? Like, I love that you gave the example of, oh, she's bossy too. She's a great leader. So there's great ways that we can reframe our thoughts to be able to propel us to be more successful.
Absolutely. And it's okay if you think those, right? There's nothing bad about you. It's
right.
Just acknowledgement. And usually it takes around 2 minutes to process whatever that emotion is and that acknowledgement, and then to rewrite it. So it's not like a million years and a ton of time. Just take 2 minutes, rewrite it, change that narrative, and you'll gradually change over time. And then I also wanted to touch on that apologizing. So this is one thing I've really worked on in emails, right? So,
yes.
If something is a little bit behind schedule, notoriously women will be like, sorry for the delay. I just was, brushing my kids' teeth or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But rephrasing it and saying, I appreciate your patience. Here's the document that you needed, right? It's just rephrasing some of those things so you're not as apologetic in your emails and phrases, like what time works best for you versus could you do Thursday at 4 p.m., right? Just rephrasing it really puts the power back into your voice, and you don't need to apologize. There's a lot of toxic girl boss energy out there, but we don't want that. We want, hey, I am a great employee, whether I'm a man or I'm a woman.
Exactly.
And I don't need to apologize for being a great employee.
I love it. Yeah. Again, it's not, we don't want to be toxic, hashtag girl boss. We want to be able to say, you know what, I recognize, regardless of what gender I am, that I know my worth and that I may have limiting beliefs or intrusive thoughts. I'm going to recognize those and I'm going to reframe them. I'm going to reshape them and I'm going to work consciously towards being able to support myself, to mentally have the fortitude to not continue to apologize or, think those things about myself. And I tried recently because I had heard this, like women tend to say sorry a lot. And I'm like, I'm not going to say sorry one time today. And I cannot tell you, Lindsey, how many times I'm like, no, I'm not going to say it. Shopping in the grocery store, right? You come around a corner, I'm pushing my cart and it's like, oh, sorry, excuse me, sorry. And it's like the amount of times it was flowing out of my mouth, it really made me open my eyes that it's something that I do a lot. And again, this can pertain to women and men. And so if that's something that you do, you're not elevating yourself in that moment. So, it's okay to not say sorry. You could say, excuse me. So it's small tweaks that can help you in that situation. So I just thought that was so interesting.
Absolutely. And you can still express empathy without apologizing. Right. And so I think that's important, is that you can still be there for people, but you don't have to apologize for being at that seat.
Absolutely. Again, you've earned your seat at the table. Don't apologize for it. You can still be empathetic towards others, but you don't have to put yourself down in the process, right? I think that's the most important aspect of that thought. So is there anything else you want to leave with the listeners before we end the episode today? Like any other piece of advice or anything we didn't touch on?
Well, I have loved our time here. What I do think is important is that you keep your future self in mind as you're making these decisions, because oftentimes it can be scary at the moment that it's happening. But if you fast forward and create a familiarity with your future self, and that's for investing, retirement savings, all of that, they're going to thank you for being courageous in that moment. And they're going to thank you for contributing to that retirement account. They're going to thank you for that. And really what happens in our lives is that there's a disconnect between our current self and our future self. It actually, the part of the brain, when you think of a stranger and when you think of your future self, lights up. And so if you can create a familiarity with your future self, that is really what's going to help you with your retirement journey as well as your career journey, and that you are so worth it and you have complete value and you can advocate for yourself. You can find those advocates within your firm, and that you can absolutely shape your future moving forward.
Oh, I love it. So many good nuggets of information, guys. I mean, if you didn't take any notes, you probably should go back and re-listen to the episode. And because there's so many actionable steps. I mean, the knowing your worth, performance reviews, negotiations, questions to ask in reverse interviews. I mean, there are so many things to take action on that will absolutely propel you in your career, in your ability to earn more income and to really set yourself up for success for your retirement and building your wealth. And so with that, I just want to say, Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there a place where the listeners can reach out to you or they can connect with you online?
Absolutely. So connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Lindsey Lewis. And then on Instagram, it's Linds the Financial Feminist.
I love it. And I will make sure to link that below, guys, so that way you have that information and you can get in contact with Lindsey. And she has fantastic content. We started following each other on Instagram and she just has amazing videos. So if you like today's episode, I mean, that's like what Lindsey does. She puts out a really amazing content that will absolutely help you propel yourself in your future and your career. So with that, thank you so much, Lindsey. I really appreciate you coming on. And as always, guys, if you're not already, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, all the social medias. It's at Financially Free Journey. And I post daily tips and motivation to help you achieve your money goals. Until next time.